What is up, ladies and gentlemen? I hope you're having a super duper day. It is another Monday evening. It's time for another episode of Deets with Dr. A. Welcome, welcome. My name is Dr. A. I'm the CEO and founder of the Learning Liaisons. I hope you guys are having an amazing Monday evening. Thank you for spending some time with us. We've got an amazing show, but a couple of things before we get rolling. I want to make sure we end the day strong and get that moving through the rest of the week to another weekend coming up. Before you know it, it's going to be Friday. So we got another super duper show. Before we bring on Staci Weaver, our guest of the day, a few quick things. So first, let's say hello to the main man behind the scenes, our executive producer, Matt. What's up, Matt? You with us?
Hey guys, what's going on?
Awesome. How you doing today?
All right, it's Monday, getting the week started.
Why don't you tell everybody what today? What's so special about today?
Oh, it's a very special day. I know you've been waiting for this. So today is National I Love My Feet Day.
Nice.
So everyone out there who loves their feet, this day's for you.
Nice. Yes, we started doing this a couple episodes ago. What's the website? You got that loaded in there? Maybe.
I can throw that up here in a second, but it's a National Day Calendar. So
nationaldaycalendar.com.
Yeah, it's right there
on the screen. Duh.
Yeah, look at that.
So if you're ever wondering, every day's got a special day here in the United States. So better check out that website. We're not here to plug it. We just found it, and it's a great resource. And every Monday, we're going to share with you what's special about the day.
Yep, sounds good.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for hanging out. I hope you popping in here and out. He's doing all the back end button pushing, helping us out here. See, he's an awesome guy. So thanks what you do, Matt. So here at the Learning Liaisons, we focus on helping teachers across the country pass their certification exams. But June 1st, we started rolling out a new program here at the Learning Liaisons, which is for you. As an educator myself, college professor, my background, my doctorate's in curriculum instruction. My passion is in teacher training and development. So we started June 1st, 2020, the Deets with Dr. A. This is a free PD streaming live. You're joining us here, whether you're watching live or all of our recordings are also on our YouTube channel at the Learning Liaisons. You can go back and watch all of them. I bring nothing but the best to our guests. You'll meet Staci here in a second. We've got consultants, principals, superintendents, teachers of the year, all different topics. We have topics on our YouTube channel for bullying, distance learning, the whole COVID in the classroom thing, any topic you could think of. It's all about relevant, engaging, professional development for you and as well as parents, because some of the episodes have to do with parents as well. As you can see on the bottom of the screen, if you want to keep track of our upcoming episodes, I'm consistently adding new ones. All you have to do is text the word Deets right on the bottom of the screen to that phone number. No, you're not texting my personal number. That's a group text number. And what it's going to do, it's going to instantly fire you back a link to our website, where on the page it's going to have a list of the events and all the previous ones so you can watch the recording. So definitely share those with your colleagues, your friends, your fellow teachers, professors. If you're at a university, share it, because we all know as teachers, sharing is caring, and we're all in this together. So we've got your back. So we started this June 1st. What we do here, our goal here at the Learning Liaisons is to provide you with value, because as teachers, I know for myself in the classroom and working with pre-service and graduate level students over at the University of Central Florida, we know that a lot of people leave the field not because of the pay, because you know how much you're getting paid, right? It's because of the support. So we want to make sure we give you the support you need. And if there's certain topics you want to hear about that's not on our list, let me know. And I'll go bring in some special guests, and we'll talk about that topic and provide you with the support that you need. So tonight's topic, before I bring on our guest here, Staci Weaver, is we're talking about another episode similar, somewhat along the same lines as last week. We're providing opportunities for students to be engaged and make that meaningful learning, aka project-based learning. So I have known this individual, this lovely lady, since I first started teaching back in 2002 over at Claremont Middle School in Lake County. And she was a police officer. She's a teacher. She moved out of the state, principal, superintendent. Now she runs a charter school in Texas, but I'll let her talk about herself. Let's bring on today's guest, Ms. Staci Weaver.
Hey, Jason, how are you? Nice to see
you. Staci, awesome. Thank you for joining us here on a Monday evening. So before we kind of get into our questions and our conversation for this evening, why don't you take a couple minutes and share with everybody why you became an educator, your progression from teaching to where you are now. I'll let you talk about yourself.
Sure. So I started teaching at junior college. I was a law enforcement officer before I retired and went into education. And so I taught at Broward Community College and some of the law enforcement courses there. Then I retired, moved to Claremont, and that's where we met, and I became a dropout prevention teacher. And I actually was subbing. We had just moved there, and one of the teachers came in and she said, "You should really, take the class over." And I looked at her like she was crazy. I mean, that just, I just retired. I was just doing something to occupy my time, and I loved the subbing. Mr. Coggeshall was the principal at the time. He walked in on my third day with a contract, and he said, "Listen, you can actually handle these kids, and we haven't been able to keep a sub. What do you want to teach?" And of course, he gave me that, summers off, which you and I both know never happens, and everything. But both my kids were in the school, and we had just moved there, so that's literally how I became a teacher. Wound up loving it. Moved to Texas. Once I got to 2 years later, once I got to Texas, I continued in dropout prevention. About 2 years later, I became a principal. And then I worked my way up through curriculum jobs, special education positions, things like that. And then I became a superintendent of a very small charter school, opened it up from the ground up. It was an amazing experience. And then I went to a much larger charter school after that and became where I am now as the senior operations director of the schools. And we're in Dallas, South Dallas area and Plano.
Awesome. So where is Plano? If people are from Texas, is that like in the middle, south, east, west?
North. So we're north. We're up in the north, maybe 45 minutes from the border of Oklahoma.
Awesome. And what kind of brought you into the field of education? Like what initially, was that experience in the classroom, or did you have an idea that you wanted to get into education?
So I think it started with my oldest, who really struggled, and he was in special ed, and I thought, I don't want any child to dislike school the way he did, and so unhappy going to school, and because he was just, he struggled. And so that's why I went into took the dropout prevention, because I wanted to work with those struggling students. And then I just felt like every day I went to school that I was helping. It just made me feel better that no child would hate school the way he did and just not be happy when they went there.
Yeah. And your daughter is a teacher as well, right? Wasn't she just teacher of the year?
Yes, she's teacher of the year for our school district. Yes, so awesome. She's also a teacher. Yes.
Awesome.
Yep.
She's actually going to be our guest next week, so we're going to talk about some cool stuff with her next week. Awesome. Yeah, there we go. And you caught me again. I did it again. That's the second time. I forgot in the introduction to talk about next week. That's what I get for not looking at my notes here. But perfect segue. You kind of butt in there, but that's good. I like that. So next week there is Staci's daughter, Brandy. So Brandy's going to be with us next week, where we're going to talk about social emotional learning, which is definitely a relevant topic today. We had some previous episodes on that as well. So she's going to talk about that next week. So definitely join us next week. So sorry, Matt, don't hit me. Okay. All right. So let's get rolling here. So just like every week, we've got a series of discussion questions. Miss Weaver put some together. I added some. And what we're going to do is we're going to progress through those. And you guys watching, if you're watching live or watching the recording, like a lot of people do on our YouTube channel, feel free to comment, ask questions, and we'll make sure they get them answered. So obviously, if you do it live, we'll answer them now. But in the recording on the YouTube channel, we will address those for you. So let's start simple. Obviously, the topic is project-based learning. So Staci, what is project-based learning? Because we know a lot of people have misconceptions about what that really is.
Sure. So project-based learning is really taking the student and putting them in control and making them accountable for their learning. And it's done through projects. It builds communication skills. It builds their collaboration skills. If a teacher knows how to put together a great project, then she's taking their interests and things that can connect with that student. Mm-hmm. So it's done in what we call a toolkit. So they make a toolkit. That's their lesson plans, basically. And project-based learning usually goes anywhere from, most projects are 4 weeks, but some can go as long as 9 weeks. And we in Texas, we use the TEACs. That's our essential learning, our strands that must be taught. And so through the project, you go in and out, because not all strands can always be taught in the project. Some are taught outside of it. So we just take all of this and we provide the student a 21st learning experience through project-based learning and collaboration.
Awesome. And you provided this graphic here I put on the screen here. So maybe you can kind of take a minute or two and kind of walk us through this, because this really gives a very good comprehensive overview of this process.
Absolutely. So when you think of project-based learning, it isn't that they just make a project at the end. People really don't have a great grasp of what it is. And we do it in steps. We benchmark it. Just like you benchmark in school all of your different learning achievements that you expect your students to have in their outcomes. So basically, sometimes we teach it ahead and then we get it, and then we do a project launch. So we basically have, like it says, activities, workshops, lectures, homework, research, and labs. And then the benchmark, and then we reflect, and then it goes into simulations and more discussions and modeling and reading and interviews. So basically, really, this is just our framework for what we do. And the benchmarks are just, we check for what the kids know, what they don't know. We always start out asking the students, we use a driving question. That's how project-based learning moves from, is a driving question. So we always first ask the driving question, and we check with the students what they know and what they need to know in order to complete the project. So students have to fill out, like, on sticky notes, and they'll go right up there and they'll write everything they know on a sticky note and everything they want to know. And that's used through all of this. And what happens is when we launch the project, we get somebody from the community. Like if we're doing something on the ecosystem, we'll find a scientist or somebody that works in a lab or something like that. They'll come in and they'll launch it for us. So the kids make those connections with the community. And from that, we keep going. And then at the end, we have like a culminating project where the students really show us that they demonstrate the authentic learning through the project and collaboration with their peers. So we have quizzes, we have, all types of things. Tests go through it. Sometimes there's written tests. Sometimes the project is the, basically the test at the end. So that's basically how we work through the project-based learning.
Awesome. So it sounds like to me, this is something that is planned out especially, but also it really reaches all aspects and engages all types of learners and kind of holds them accountable and makes it relevant. That's the key part that I see. It's all about engagement and making learning relevant, because this is stuff that students will remember. And when you ask them, hey, can you tell me about a great lesson or something you did when you were younger, they'll go straight to that because that's something that made an impact on their lives. That's something that I always, when I do my course at UCF, and we'll talk about, teachers that made a difference. And can you give me a lesson plan? These are 21-year-olds. They can go back, and the lessons that they can talk about are the ones that were engaging, that required them to do things like this. So that's awesome. All right. So kind of walk through, and if you guys are watching this live or the recording and you want access to any of these images that we do show, just leave us a comment. I'll make sure I could send that off to you. So what's the purpose of this? I mean, in your own words, or, research-based as well, but what's the purpose of project-based learning?
So when we're looking at things, honestly, at some point, everything that we do in work is a project. We always have to work and learn and collaborate, and we usually work in areas that obviously have a high interest to us. So project-based learning is basically that. It's a 21st century form of learning where students collaborate and they work on things together for an end product. Of course, it's highly engaging. We always try to make sure that, it piques their interest. It's very much student-centered and student-facilitated. So our facilitators, our teachers, basically are there to guide, help, make sure they're on track, but it really is ownership for the group. It teaches them to have roles, responsibilities, and so it really does connect them to the community, society, and that's what I think a big part of the PBL is it's student driven.
Awesome. And if you guys watching, if you've done an example of something like that in your school or you're planning on it, go ahead and throw it in the comments. We want to know what kind of topics and things that you're working with your project-based learning. All right. So obviously a big part of this is building relationships. So in order to have a part of an effective project-based learning, why is this so important? Why is relationship such an important part of this?
Well, we try to form relationships that are intellectually stimulating for our students. So when we come up with the projects, and we give our teachers every Wednesday 3 hours planning. So they get to work as a team and plan every Wednesday for 3 hours. So our projects really are given a lot of time and effort, to really bring them and to a point of engagement that the students are engaged all the way through. And that's really a big part of the effectiveness, is that it's so highly engaging. Another part is also that the students do a lot of reflecting. So they get that driving question, and then they're doing their research and they're coming up with the information, and then we have a reflection portion. And so they're reflecting on everything that they've done so far, and they're seeing how that meets that driving question. Because at the end of the day, this project has to answer the driving question. So that's why it's such a big part of it.
Awesome. We'll get to that driving question too. I got one of those. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. So PBL is all about making relevant and meaningful experiences like we talked about before. Can you give like a personal example of a project that you did with students that you won't forget?
Sure. So a lot of times what we do is all four content areas will work to one project. Sometimes it may be just project-based for that content, but if you're doing PBL truly the way it should be, all four content should be working towards it. So we did one on basically camping. So when we had our sixth graders, or sixth graders do world geography. So they pick somewhere anywhere in the world. Seventh graders pick somewhere in Texas because they do Texas history. Eighth grade, it's US. So you get my drift, all the way up through 12th grade. So what they did was we incorporated all of it, and it was going to be a camping trip. So they had to locate the country. They had to look at the climate. They had to look at all the things that they would have to bring with them, the amount of space they had, the size of the tent, everything. So all the way, we did this all the way through 12th grade, but obviously at different levels. So we got all of the math, science, social studies, everything in, and it culminates. And then of course we had a program where before COVID hit, then you could camp. So we had camping at our school. Unfortunately, with COVID hitting, we didn't get the camping part in. We had some camping earlier, but basically the kids loved it because what they did was they would meet with the teachers, they'd have their lessons, but they'd actually be able to go outside, because we did this during COVID. Okay. They were able to go outside and do, get water samples, get soil samples, depending on where they were in science and where they were supposed to be, and basically looked at that. So it was just a very engaging and exciting, and they could do it in their backyard, and parents did pick up things at the school because if they needed anything, we provided it. But the kids loved it because it was so engaging, and it brought in all four contents. So where kids say, when am I ever going to use algebra? When am I ever going to use geometry? Well, this project used all of those things at one time. So it was a great experience for the kids. They loved it.
Awesome. And you mentioned stuff about going outside and doing things. Is a project-based learning, does it have to involve physically going outside the classroom, or is this something that can be done in the classroom as well?
It can be totally done inside the classroom as well, but because we got a little creative, which is what's great about project-based learning. We don't use books, so we don't have any books. So basically, it was during COVID. We knew kids were stuck in the house, weren't going anywhere, had nothing to do. Playing video games when they weren't, attending school, things like that, but they weren't getting out. And we thought this was a great time to bring them back to our times, where when we went after school, well, my time's not yours, I'm a little older, but go outside, find things, do your research with your surroundings and see what's out there. And it was amazing because the kids loved it. But no, you could do it strictly without going outside project-based learning. You could do all of your research on the computer and, make your connections that way.
Awesome. So let's see here. So a lot of the times teachers and myself and yourself been in the classroom before. Everybody always stresses over there's objective standards I have to reach. I don't have the time or the willingness to develop this whole project because it sounds like it takes a lot of time to put it together. Realistically speaking, I know this was going to vary depending on the topic of what kind of project, but to calm the nerves or help teachers understand if they haven't done this before, how long does it take to do this type of projects-based learning?
So I would say it takes about a week to put together a really highly engaging project, and you're collaborating with your peers. But remember that week, when you think about a week, some people can put a lesson plan together for a day. That week of planning can take you 4 to 9 weeks, because our projects, the smallest project other than math is short projects always. But we actually call those problem-based on the PBL side. That's the only one that they actually have PBL with problem-based. So, but for the most part, it takes about a week. It's like I said, we give them 3 hours a week just to collaborate together besides other common plannings and PLCs. So we give a lot of planning time, but it goes a long way for that week.
Do you feel like if a teacher is really good at this and they learn how to do it and they reflect on any issues they had, they could actually potentially put together a project that might cover a lot more standards than traditional teaching would be? You might be able to make it more meaningful, but cover more material at the same time. Or you can does that make sense? Is that a fair assessment?
And basically, I always, when I look at the toolkits and I, talk to teachers about what they're doing and things like that, even Brandy, because of course she works in the same school district where I am, that's the thing, the dual coded, as we call them. I don't know in Florida if they call them that, but dual coded are the teachers you see the most of, and they repeat, and what are they attached to, and the ones that would be, you teach in succession. You can get so many in a project. Now, we also tell the teachers, if you can't get it in this project, then you come out of the project, you let the students know we're coming out of the project, and we teach those TEKs in a different format, and then they go back to the project. So there are times where we do have to come in and out of the project, because we have to master those teaks, but that's not for like long term. It's a short.
Awesome. I want to ask that because even when I first started teaching, everyone have all these creative things you can do, but when people think creative, they think, oh my God, this is going to take me forever and I got a million other things to do. But that's a good thing I wanted you to point out, is that this actually to make it more fun and more engaging, but at the same time cover more material so there's less stress on you as an educator if you do it the right way. So since we're living in this whole new normal thing, do you feel like something like this, do you feel like this could be something that's easier, more meaningful to conduct during the idea of COVID-19? Now, yes, you mentioned me before we went on air that your kids at your school are coming back brick and mortar, but as we know, a lot of places around the country aren't. So do you think that something like this is easier to do with teachers in an online environment versus traditional brick and mortar?
So we're bringing ours back about the 21st of September, and we may go longer, but we're going to have first responder kids on campus. We are going to have kids on campus. It's inevitable because there's people that have to work. But I think that there's probably going to be two sides to this. I mean, there's always people that are going to say that, it's not easier, but we've been a high tech campus. We're a new tech campus. And in Texas, that's project-based learning. And we use new tech as our basically our standards. It's a company out of California that works with us. It's our educational liaison, basically.
Okay.
And so with this new norm, if done right, project-based learning could be a tremendous asset and take so much stress off teachers. And we, because you have the asynchronous learning and the synchronous learning going on right now. And those that are doing the asynchronous, project-based learning is made for asynchronous. You started out, you launch the project with the kids and you let them go and you monitor and they work in groups. And I mean, the teachers and the students have mastered the use of Google Classroom and going into Google meeting rooms and working together and collaborating together. So if done right in this new norm, because we all call it, I absolutely believe project-based learning could really be a tremendous asset for teachers and students.
So I know we're gonna have a lot of teachers watching this recording or watching live from around the country. So you're in Texas. So using Texas as an example, are there websites or resources that have these projects pretty much put together for you, just like a plug and play kind of thing?
So like I said, we're a new tech campus. So if you're a project-based learning campus, usually you join something like new tech. There's tons of projects in there, great projects to show you. I mean, you could use a project, just change it or tweak it to, whatever format or your subject area, your content. But yeah, there's tremendous amount of resources and projects, videos. I mean, once you become a new tech campus, they provide you so many resources that it's just like any other curriculum you use, you need all the resources to go with it.
Awesome. So is this something, how often do we do these projects? Is it something that you kind of doing throughout the whole year, just rotating from project to project and stopping when you have to, do some explicit instruction or anything like that? Or is this something you pick and choose topics ahead of time?
So we pick the topics ahead of time. We do this for the entire school year. Like I said, we have no books. We're totally a project-based learning campus. We meet all the TEKs. So our teachers go through, all the standards and make sure they're addressed. We use a YAG like anybody else. We have our strands have to go in this, a certain order. And so we do all of that, but this is year round. It's not like a pick and choose when you want to do a project. So when a project ends, whether it's anywhere between 4 to 9 weeks, then we just start that whole process over. Sometimes we teach a little bit and then we do a big launch and we go into the project. Sometimes you start with the launch and that takes care of it. So it can be done either way, but we do projects the entire school year.
Awesome. That kind of brings me to another question, somewhat on the same topic is this something that you use to begin a unit, or do you have to teach preload information and then go to a project?
Depends on what it is. So sometimes we do because the kids have absolutely no knowledge. And so we will preload and we'll, pre-teach and we'll make sure we get the vocabulary in and they understand the meanings and, depending on what it is. So many times we preload. Other times the launch, because they're familiar with it, it's something they can connect to, which we try to do, most of the projects, something they can connect with. Then we'll bring in somebody to do the project launch.
Awesome. So let's talk about the teacher in this whole project, because a lot of people think, this is where that misconception comes into play. This is not like group work or doing an assignment with a bunch of students and one person does all the work. Obviously, everyone has every role and things that they do. But what about the teacher? What is a teacher's role when we talk about project-based learning?
So we call our teachers facilitators because that's what we call them, and they're facilitating project-based learning. So if they're doing what they're supposed to in a perfect classroom, they're handing it over to the students after the launch. I mean, the students are doing it, but let's be honest, they're aggressively monitoring. They're looking at what the students are doing. They're helping them with reflection. They're guiding them, but the students really have complete ownership on the project and what's going on and doing the work. There's very little teacher lecture. It's pretty much student-centered, student-facilitated, and you'll see students always, whatever area they excel, you'll see that shift of them taking over. I know a lot of teachers don't like it because they feel like this either one or two kids do all the work and the rest don't. But when taught right, when launched properly and explained, and when highly engaging, everybody's involved. You don't have that issue. And they may not excel in all the same areas, so some may lead in some areas and some the other. But if you put a project together and you make connections with your students and you know your students, your project should be engaging enough that everybody does their part.
Do you feel like this is something that is more of like a middle school and high school thing? Is there a certain grade cutoff where you think they probably can't handle something like this?
So right now we're doing it in our, we're using the Echo platform and things for our 6 through 12, but we are doing project-based learning from kindergarten, all the way up. Wow. And it's working. And I mean, our school and we do, like we're a trilingual education school. So our kids are learning Chinese, they're learning Spanish and English at the same time, some of them. And we still have all this project-based learning going on, and our scores have come up tremendously. So we're not seeing anywhere where we have to pause and regroup and think, okay, is there a gap? I mean, there's definitely gaps right now. My superintendent calls it the COVID slide, and she's like, we got to, and fill in the gaps. But prior to any of the COVID situations, we have been moving forward and doing it fiercely with project-based learning.
Yeah, we actually did one of our early episodes. We actually talked about the COVID slide too. It's up on our YouTube channel. But so we talked about you doing it at all grade levels. Can you talk us through maybe something that went wrong with what are the pitfalls that teachers might fall into that will cause us to go haywire and not be successful and cause issues?
So I think one of the major issues is the engagement and the connections. When students don't connect and they don't have ownership and there's no buy-in, it's going to go south. I mean, it's that simple. And that all comes from that, which you'll get to, but next week is social emotional side and rapport with your students and knowing, the culture and of your students and their background, the baggage they come with, all of that really. I mean, if you're not a teacher who doesn't build rapport and doesn't have connections with your students, you're going to have a hard time rolling out project-based learning because it's centered around all of that. So that's a big piece of it. So I could see it failing that way as far as that goes, or a teacher who's just not comfortable with this. I mean, we've had to have those conversations where we politely let the teacher, know that, the traditional styles of teaching and books, when we walk in the classroom, we shouldn't be seeing you lecturing and you doing everything and students watching. So sometimes we get teachers that can't let go of that traditional when they join us, and we have to help them either coach them up or coach them out.
And it's, personally, I've done projects and stuff and cooperative learning activities with our students, but I never honestly ever done projects like this. And the first thing that comes to my mind, and I'm sure you can attest to this, is you got to teach the procedures of this in advance and explicitly. You got to teach how this is going to work, why we're doing it, who's going to do what role. And so they have to actually, you can't just, it's all about rapport too, but it's all about, it's like classroom procedures, classroom management. You got to spend a lot of time so they know exactly what the expectations are. Is that true with something like this?
Truer words are spoken. As we're speaking right now, my teachers our new teachers are in a 3-day residency in PBL. And so they're learning all about PBL from start to finish, every single thing. And basically the way you teach it, you model it. You do it project-based learning. So while this is going on, of course, in the residency, the whole entire way that we teach it and they look at it and they research it is matching what you expect, when you model what you want.
Awesome. So I'm sure a lot of people when they're watching this are like, all right, this is great. It's engaging, but what about grades? Because obviously, sad to say, everything's based on grades. How do you grade something like this?
So we look at outcomes. Okay. And so we do the projects and it's outcomes. And basically there's 5 learning outcomes that we look at. And there's a rubric for it. There's knowledge, thinking. So what aligns to our TEACs, basically, collaboration, agency, and then written communication or oral communication. So sometimes we give them a test at the end, but sometimes their project is how we grade them. So every student, and students will grade each other, and that's not seen by the rest. It's just seen by the teacher. Sometimes the teacher will pull them and ask, who did what, or, how much, things like that. But most of the time, it's usually a project that's presented. So they have to split up the presentation. They each present, they each talk about it, and they explain it. And then there's questions, a lot of critical thinking questions come out of that. So the teacher's able to ask critical questions for the students in the class, because they've learned how to ask critical questions and how to extend questions. No yes and no, everything's open-ended with explanation. It's a big part of the teacher's job in project-based learning is those type of questions and having the students stretch and elaborate on their answers so that they know that the students have comprehended and definitely have learned the techniques that they need to master. So basically that's how it's done, the grading system.
So you're saying that the kids have to answer a lot of questions and explain the why? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, and that's where your driving question comes from. Imagine that, right? Critical thinking, exactly.
It's all about, it's the same thing when we work with teachers, help them pass their certification exams. We're talking about content stuff. I drive people crazy all the time when I say, well, why is that the answer? Why? Well, I don't know, it looks right. No, why? So it's the same thing in all types of learning. If you know the why, that's more meaningful for you and it makes sense. Instead of versus just traditional memorizing and spitting it back on the test. So these are things and skills that they're going to take with them as they get older and definitely help them when they graduate into the real world and get a job. It's definitely skills that transcend their whole life.
Absolutely. And, I've heard critics say, oh, when they go off to college after project-based learning, they can't do anything. They can't take notes. We do the same thing as anybody else. We have interactive notebooks. Our teachers use the note-taking processes and things like that. That's still all incorporated into what we do. It's just done in a little differently. But bottom line is, even college at some point is going to have to make that shift, because the one thing I hear when I try to get students like internships and I talk to them, I hear from business owners all over, because I work with the Chamber of Commerce all over in our areas. They tell me that they would rather hire a student that can collaborate than take notes. Because because of texting and social media, students do not communicate and collaborate the way they used to. And then when they come together to work on a project, they don't know how. So project-based learning feeds right into what our technology, and almost every job you have now, you have to have some type of form of technology to do.
It must drive those students, and I'm sure you remember from the classroom too. I remember them, those students that I just want to do it myself. This must drive them bananas if they have to do something like this.
Yeah, and you do have certain students that'll say, can I just do it myself? No, you can't just do it yourself. You can't. And like I said, once you build those relationships and those rapport, and the kids learn, and they learn it. See, we're teaching it at such an early age that that's the only way they've learned. So our kindergartners now that are 8th grade, that's all they've seen. They're going into 8th grade now, that started with us when our particular charter school opened. That's what they know. So that's how they've learned. It's harder when kids come in, from a traditional independent school district that, that had books and, take notes and that's it, to, learn this, but they do.
Well, that makes me think then, in like, if we're talking about a traditional K through 12 school, do you feel like this is something that the school has to bring on board, that kids move from grade level to grade level and they get this experience? Because the way you're speaking, this is great. But I keep thinking about, well, if one teacher does a great job doing this, but no one else does it, it's kind of like, things might be lost there. Do you think it's something that the school in general should build it into their culture, or can the teacher do it on their own?
No, it's got to be a culture. Jason, the entire school, it has to be a culture. It has to be a belief. You have to drink the Kool-Aid. We have, you do, you just do. It's a completely, it's definitely, definitely a shift. I will tell you, we have phenomenal instructional coaches, and our coaches work with the new teachers that come in, and the time and the effort that they spend with them working on the project. So when I tell you that the teachers have 3 hours, they have a content director in there with them. Their principal is in the planning times, and then you also have these coaches. So there's so much collaboration, so much help. So we have an incredible amount of training that we do. I don't think I've worked anywhere before in my life where this much training was provided to teachers. It's incredible, the support and the training that's provided.
Awesome. So how long does it take for a teacher to put together a project-based lesson?
So a good lesson takes at least a week of collaboration with peers. Usually it'll take a week, sometimes longer, because I will tell you that everything we do, we tie to the community. So we're always bringing somebody in from the community. So you're always, looking for those people. We've been very lucky. We're very well tied into the community and with our legislators. So like if we're doing a civic project, we have had no problem getting senators, U.S. senators or Texas state representatives, judges. We've been very lucky people that, work at Parks and Recreations that come in and do different, all those type of places. We have a really good, pool of community members. So, but it could take, sometimes it takes a good week or two, because you want to really have great things in that project launch and you want it to be engaging from the beginning to the end. So, but I will tell you that when I ask teachers that, they're like a week, but I want to tell you, my teachers spend all summer doing this. They say a week, but they really, honestly, they plan all summer because they're trying to get all these great things and these activities and put together. But you can do it. A good project could take a week.
And the good thing is once you build up these projects, you've got them and you can always refer to them and use them each year. So, obviously you're going to tweak some things here and there, but you're going to have this stuff in there in your teacher toolbox that you can use each year. Are there any certain websites that off the top of your head that you can share for information about project-based learning or examples?
So I can only tell you from what I've learned and what I've trained on, and that's the New Tech Network, and they're national. So I'd recommend anybody that wants to see an example or look at projects. They usually have like a free few days where, like any good website does in education, they hook you in by giving you a few days free, and then of course you want to be a part of it. But I would tell you that all the resources you need are just go to the New Tech Network.
newtechnetwork.com.
Yep. And okay. You'll find everything that you need in there. It's got just videos and sample toolkits. All of the different graphics I provided you are in there. There's just a tremendous wealth of knowledge within there.
Awesome. So yeah, definitely you guys watching the recording or watching, if you have experiences with project-based learning and certain topics that you've found success with, go ahead and share those. Put them in the comment box. We'd love to hear from you. So as educators, you kind of brought up the term, we want students to find their voice. So how does PBL play into this?
So I'm going to tell you, it's a tremendous foundation to give students a voice, because, students are very uncomfortable, especially your middle school students. They never want to come out and talk and they're uncomfortable. And because PBL plays right into their interests and into their culture and to their diversity, they want a voice. Like right now, when our students come back, we're doing a 3-week project on, obviously, the elephant in the room, diversity and everything that's going on in this country. We just decided, as a team, we're going to hit that head on. Our superintendent's very avant-garde in her thinking. And, she said, listen, before we even touch the TEKS, the first 3 weeks of school, we need a culture project. So we were thinking of all the different diversity in our school, the cultures, everything, and we're going to bring our kids in, and basically they're going to come together and they're going to do a project on diversity and how they can attach it to the community. And the driving question there is, how can they make a change that will positively affect their community at large? So that's our driving question for that. And then that's the project they're going to be working on for 3 weeks.
Is this going to be all grade levels?
All grade levels, K through 12.
Wow.
Questions are a little different.
What kind of feedback or thoughts do you think? I know you obviously didn't start it yet, but what do you anticipate some students' comments or things have to say about this? Like, you think they'll be all for it? You think might be some pushback as kids get older or younger? What do you think as in your experience?
So of course, with the little ones, we're a lot careful. I mean, just like when we do an active shooter training, we never tell them that's what it is. Even when we do drills, we're very careful how we word things. There might be somebody on campus that shouldn't be here, so we're going to be very quiet, shut the lights until we figure it out. So you're spoon feeding it very differently with the younger ones. But for our older kids, we're really in tune with diversity. We do a great job with culture. We have a Clarence Glover, we call him Dr. Freedom or Professor Freedom. He does all of our cultural diversity with our high school and middle school students, does a phenomenal job with that. And so we're really been on that, but not to the degree that we need to. Yeah. And so our kids love it. I mean, they really rise to the occasion when they have classes with Professor Freedom. So I think this is going to be right up their alley. It's going to give them a voice. They can talk about how they felt. We have a very high African-American population and a very high Hispanic population. So I think together, this project's really going to give them a voice.
Yeah, I think it's great when teachers in schools are definitely going to embrace that and talk about it. I just kind of think of like, and this is me being the educator and the, leading of young teachers, you always got to think about how you're going to structure that and how you're going to react to certain comments, because wherever you are in the country, doesn't matter what race you are, background, doesn't matter. If you have I'll never forget talking about current events and talking about articles and teaching high school psychology or world history, and some of the comments that would come for these 17 and 18-year-olds, teaching educators, how do you respond to certain things and not escalate a disagreement in the classroom or, God forbid, a fight between students. That's kind of the things that I think, I don't know, that's how I feel. I think educators should prepare themselves for, because everything is not daisies and rainbows, because people are going to have their opinions, and the first time maybe for some of them that they're able to voice them and talk about them. So is that something that they're going to teach those educators, how to respond? Sure.
And you'll be surprised, but that also, I oversee the safety and security for the campus, and that comes into it also. We don't know students are going to have civil unrest. We may have protests. Those are all things that we need to talk to our kids about and let them know that how to do it in the right way, so that they will be greeted and and accepted, and it'll be, how can I say, nobody wants to say it the wrong way, but we want to make sure that we allow them to express it, but we teach them how to do it the right way so that they don't get themselves in trouble, and we don't have fights, and we don't have, people saying things that, hurt other people's feelings. And so I think our teachers have to have those conversations ahead of time. They have to pre-teach this, that, when people speak, that, everybody has to respect each other, and everybody has the right to say how they feel, long as done in the right context. So those are conversations that we're gonna, as leaders, we have to have with teachers prior to setting them in to do this. And so we spent a full week preparing teachers for this project.
I can imagine, because that's the first thing I think, because I'm not saying that students are bad are going to say bad things. Some of them might, but some of them never had an opportunity to talk about stuff like this. So they might not realize what they're saying could be offensive to someone else. So it's good. I really implore everybody, especially high school level, definitely, but definitely encourage those conversations, but obviously done in the right way. And like you said, you got to teach that stuff ahead of time and how to respond and how to interact with students. So that's awesome. I hope every school across the country tries to do something. I know it's a little more difficult with depending on how your school looks when you open, but there definitely should be some conversations, because it's every time you turn on the news, that's what they talk about. So awesome. So you mentioned before a phrase, and people who are new to project-based learning, you said the phrase driving question a lot. Can you explain what that is first, and then how it kind of plays into this whole concept of project-based learning?
Sure. So when we're launching a project or we're starting a project, we always start with the driving question. And I will tell you, that is the hardest part of a good project. My superintendent walks into classrooms and she looks at the driving questions. It's like people sweat, because they know if it's not a great driving question, they're not gonna be able to launch. They need a really good driving question. And so what the driving question is basically what the students have to prove or answer at the culmination of a project. And so with that said, it's not that easy, because you have to be very careful. When you work on a project, it's easy to go off on a tangent or go in, you start and then, you ever look at even a child's writing sampling, during state assessment, it starts great. And then they're not even talking about what the actual prompt asks. Happens all the time. Same thing with these questions. These driving questions start the whole launch. So what happens is when we put up a driving question, like this project that we're talking about now, and how will you do something positive that will affect your community at large, and so basically the kid, that's what they have, lots of questions because they're not sure. So the teacher will start out with a knows and needs to know, and they'll have every student write down on a sticky note what they need to know about this before they can answer that question, and what they think they already know. And that starts that gives a teacher an idea of, okay, where do I have to go with this? So that I know that my students understand the driving question, what information do they need, what research do they have to do? And so that helps the teacher guide the students with that knows and needs to knows at the beginning of the project launch.
Awesome. And when we talk about project-based learning, is there an answer at the end of this? Is this built like it's all open-ended responses? That's the key to it, correct?
Correct. So it's always, there's never a yes or no or an easy answer. Students absolutely have to be able to elaborate, give examples, through their projects. It's never going to be, there's not like an easy fit answer. It's not intended, because we want them to do research, and we want them to think critically. So it's not ever intended to be a one size fits all easy answer so everyone's successful. It doesn't work that way.
Awesome. So obviously you mentioned this phrase earlier before. So a big key to success on these types of projects is that phrase buy-in from students. What advice would you give teachers, whether new teachers, veteran, any teacher who wants to create more projects like this, or initially start and try their first one this year? What kind of advice would you give to them?
The most important thing is you got to know your students. You have to be that approachable teacher that has an interest in your students. You have to learn about your students. You have to know their interests, their culture, their diversity. Because if you want buy-in on these projects, besides highly engaging, you've got to make connections. I don't care what you do. I'll never forget when I was a principal and I was doing my walkthroughs on classrooms, and I happened to make the mistake, because my daughter is 100 times smarter than me. Unfortunately, I have one of those, and she's always right, and I'm not being facetious. She really is always right. And I said, why are they, he's spent 10 minutes on football. She said, no, he spent 10 minutes making connections, finding the interests of the, and she went on. And that's when that shift started. We're going back 10 years ago. So she said, that's what it is. That's how you connect with kids. If you connect and you make those relationships, she said, the old school thought, we don't have to be nice and we don't have to, be their friend. Yeah, you do. You have to be someone that they feel comfortable and they're happy with and they share with. And that's key to the success of PBL, making those connections with your students, understanding, what moves them, what excites them, what engages them, without putting things in there that are obstacles. Because if you put in something that a student absolutely can't connect with or feels uncomfortable, your project's dead. Mm-hmm. So it's got to be a highly engaging project that grabs the kids. And it has to make them think, and it has to cause them to pause and reflect and do more research and take a look at what they did. And if it's not where it should be, then go back, sometimes start over. But in order for kids to care, you've got to connect them. You got to make connections.
What are some quick examples for especially for our new teachers out there to make those connections the first couple of days or first week of school? What are some examples that you kind of share with your teachers to accomplish this goal?
Sure. Those are, your simple icebreakers. If you think when you go back, like we do as teachers, when we're brand new, and you even something as simple as, step to the line if you've ever done this, if you've never, things like, mm-hmm. You need it. Have them interact, have them interview each other, have them ask each other, the students ask questions, and then share about the other student. You're learning, they're learning, because they're going to have to collaborate with each other. Mm-hmm. So they need to build the same connections you need to build with them. So while they're building connections, you're paying attention to those connections. And it's all just basically that collaboration between the kids and between the teacher.
Awesome. Yeah, because I remember when I was still in the class, we spent almost the first week doing stuff like that, because if it's a first or second day of school, and I can't speak for every principal, but if most principals walk into a classroom on day 2 or day 3, and you're the teacher sitting there playing games or getting to know students, they might think, what the heck's going on here? We need to get to the content. But then on the flip side, you've got principals and leaders that understand the process and know the importance of that. So that's kind of where a lot of people, it depends on the culture of your school too. It all goes back to that. If they're willing to forget project-based learning, it's just the culture of your school. If they know that you care about your kids and want to learn about them, that speaks volumes. But if you're the principal walking in on day 2, like, what's going on? You need to jump into this stuff. You might want to second guess where you're working at. I don't know. That's my philosophy, at least.
I couldn't agree more. I can tell you, and my dropout prevention kids, we play trash ball as a review before test. Basically, I did it every week because that to them was so much fun, because they felt like they were playing basketball. I knew they loved it. And guess what? They learned. You've got, and so I kept that thinking when I became a principal. My goal as a principal, I want to know every kid's name. My teachers were astounded that I knew every kid's name, but a couple of weeks in, I knew all my students, and I used to try to find out things about them. So if I saw them, I could ask them. I knew who my athletes were. I knew who my kids were in robotics. It's that simple. And I will tell you, part of our teacher evaluation is a big portion of it is that professionalism, but that they go to student activities and that they do things with kids outside of their job, outside of a stipend, but that they're doing those connections and that professionalism, not being paid, not being asked to. And it's a big part of our teacher observation plan that we use, is to see that they can do that with their kids.
Awesome. So we talked about giving advice to teachers, but what about with the students in the classroom? So some students get scared with any type of a project because they fear that they won't be able to do it and they'll fail. Because for most students, let's be real, that if a teacher comes in there with this, odds are they didn't experience something like this if it's obviously it's done the right way. What advice can you give to teachers when they have students in the class and they might be fearful of doing projects like this?
So then you bring it, you put them in a group. You have to know your students. So you want to put them in a group of kids that are going to help him build confidence, not make that student feel uncomfortable. I think that the teacher also has to, build a relationship with the student, walk them through it, have those conversations. Do it, scaffold it, do it in small chunks. When you have a student, just like anything that you differentiate, anything like that, same thing is that this is a skill that they learn. It's a skill. So you work with them, you build on the skill, you scaffold it up, you take them through it slowly, you give them opportunities to be successful. So as the opportunities become bigger opportunities and a little bit harder, for lack of a better word, you're building them and they're doing it in small pieces, they'll build up. Just like any student that's struggling, it's that scaffolding and reteaching and working and you're just building capacity in that child.
Awesome. So this type of project-based learning, do you think that it's best geared towards certain demographics? Yeah, I put some examples on there, but this can go for anything. Some people might think to themselves, well, this is great, but you could only do this with kids that are in the upper quartile, or you can't do this if you have, ESOL students or ELL students in class. And what do you think about that? Can this be for anybody, or are there different segmentations?
What the beauty of project-based learning is the differentiation, because you can differentiate and kids that are creative, this gives them a tremendous opportunity where the typical books and papers and pens is not their area. So when we do our toolkits, which is our lesson plans, we put in everything for we call them ELs in Texas. So everything for our EL kids and our special education students and any of our students that have accommodations that we are going to account for, that's all built into the project. So it's scaffold, like I said, it's differentiated. There's opportunities for them to build on that. We incorporated, just like you would do with any other IEP or any other LPAC information or things like that. You look at, you go over the students, their prescriptive needs and make sure that you're scaffolding and, you're spiraling them in and you're working with them. So to me, I think this is easier. It's not sit there, read a book, memorize, put something down. You're creating and you're researching, and we have one-to-one computers with our kids, so they can use a computer at any time they need to research and find things for their projects. We do like I said, in our campuses, we do everything in English and Spanish, so there's no issue there. Students all our communication with our parents is done that way. If our website, if there's something in English, there's something in Spanish. Anything we send out in both languages. So we make it a very comfortable learning environment for parents, for students, for everybody.
Awesome. So we got 2 more questions to talk about. We're going to wrap it up. So can you remember the first time that you facilitated a PBL project where your students, can you talk about like the good aspects and the bad aspects?
Well, I'll tell you this. So I came in as an administrator, so I didn't teach in PBL. But I will tell you that when I came to work for Legacy Charter Schools, I do walkthroughs, and so I was learning as I went. And the great thing about it was that the first project that I was in there, I was asking the students questions. I didn't have to ask the teacher anything. In fact, the teachers are trained. If a visitor walks in, you take them over to the driving question. You explain where you are in the project, and they talk you through it. So it was incredible because this was my first time seeing project-based learning. And I honestly learned to become proficient in project-based learning from my walkthroughs, because the students would walk me through, tell me where they are, explain the work they're doing. And so for me, it was a tremendous experience. I haven't really met with anything negative, not from parents. Really haven't faced any negatives. And I've been on the other side. I've been in the classroom with the books and it worked great. I've turned around campuses from failing campuses and brought them all the way up. With paper and pencil, we use PBL here. This district was very low and we're already up to a B rating. So I've only seen positive so far.
It just sounds like the whole process, if done the right way, opens the door to a lot more meaning when it comes to learning. Because
exactly what you said. It has to be done the right way. If you don't do it the right way, it's not going to work.
All right. So last question of the episode. So we don't have to talk about PBL. It doesn't have to be on that topic. I ask the same questions to everybody every week. As we enter a new school year, what's one piece of advice you could give to our teachers? Maybe you can give something for a new teacher and then for veteran teachers?
So for our new teachers, this is probably the hardest year to ever be a teacher. You're walking into such uncharted territories, waters, whatever you want to call it. You will be an amazing teacher, because once you get through this year, because this has been my hardest year in education. Seriously, I've never seen teachers work so hard. I mean, they have become virtual teachers and done it in such a short time. It's amazing that you are going to come out so much stronger on the other side. So don't let this first year scare you away, because if you make it through this first year, you're going to be incredible, because I don't think any year of teaching has ever had so much change, I would say, in what we normally do. So I think just hang in there for this year, and they'll be incredible. And our veteran teachers, please stop reading what all these parents are saying about you on Facebook. Forget about all that. You guys are amazing. I'm seeing so many teachers walk away from this. This is such an amazing profession that we change lives. I mean, one of my students just is working for NASA now, and I complimented him when I was talking to him. And I mean, he's an engineer. He's brilliant. And I said to him that my daughter's brother-in-law, that's the route he wants to go. And, he basically, and from that connection I have from my 8th grader, he's going to help my daughter's brother-in-law. I mean, the relationships, the things you make with your students are incredible. Mm-hmm. I mean, so just hang in there. Stop looking at what parents are putting about you. You're doing a great job. Just keep your head up high, because honestly, anyone that does this job loves children. They're not doing it for the money. So don't listen.
Do it for the money? Stop lying.
Definitely. I know, right? I know.
But definitely good insight. We here in Florida, they actually started school already in most of the counties for a couple of days now, and already it's it's coming. The teachers on Facebook, and I know they are, because I work online. I do all this stuff too. You work 10 times harder, and whether you're at a school where you're going to go back every day, brick and mortar, or as a mixture, or you're online, it's going to be a lot harder, because you have to work with a lot of different demographics now. Now, when I use the word demographic, I mean kids at home, kids at school, kids back and forth. So that's what I mean when I talk about that. So I applaud everybody out there. And I work with that. We work with thousands of teachers on a constant basis. Most of them are in the classroom. Some of them are in college level. But those people in the classroom, it's a lot of stress. You guys are doing a great work. Keep it up. And do not listen to any parents or anybody that bash you. That's one of the big things. A lot of parents understand it and they applaud them. But I've seen some of the comments and stuff in some of the groups, and it's like, really going to go that way? So keep up the great work. Staci, thank you for spending time. We're going to pull you out of the room here, but hang out for a couple minutes while we wrap this up. So once again, guys, thank you. Staci did an amazing job. She has a plethora of experience, from teacher, principal, superintendent, leading an academy, a charter school academy. She has got great wealth of knowledge. If you have any questions for her too, a lot of people watch our recordings of these episodes. Put in the comment box on our YouTube channel. We're here for you. This is pure, relevant, engaging, and meaningful PD training for you every Monday night. We do have some episodes that are geared towards parents as well. You could watch those. We did some on bullying a few weeks ago with our good friend, Dr. Cerullo, based out of Philly. That's on our YouTube channel. Big shout out to Claudio there. But we're here for you. So we've got a lot of cool stuff coming up. If you think that you've got what it takes to be a presenter and join me on the show and have a discussion about something, there's a form on the website. Matt put it on the bottom there. Text the word Deets to that phone number. And on that page, there'll be a button to click to be a guest as well. So once again, thank you for joining us on another Monday evening. But before we sign off, because I forgot at the beginning, my fault, throw up next week, Matt. Who's joining us next week? Like we said, actually, Miss Weaver's daughter, she was talking about, Brandy's going to be joining us, and the focus is going to be on social emotional learning in the classroom in our new normal, which is that buzzword that you see everywhere on the news and teachers are using too. So why not throw it up on here for you guys as well? So that's coming up next Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And definitely go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, watch. We have a playlist that we put together with all of these episodes. Probably about 95% of them are applicable to you. So go watch them at your own accord. Let us know in the comments what you think. Any questions you have for the presenters, put them in there as well. So next Monday, we will see you at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Once again, thank you for joining me on this Monday evening. Have a great rest of your Monday night, even better week, and another rock star weekend. And we'll see you next Monday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with another episode of the Deets with Dr. A. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you next week.